Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode on how to double your FPS. Today we're looking into Arma 3, so let's get cracking. First thing you need to do is go to your configure, go to video. Now, ignore all this just for now and go straight to your display. And you will see right here, you've got your resolution. Mine is a 1080p display. VSync is disabled by default on mine. If yours isn't disabled, then just make sure that you have disabled it. If it's enabled, I can never say that word. Okay. Next thing you want to do is, if you are running a laptop, you need to turn the resolution down because your laptop is already doing most of the work trying to power all this in the background. Last thing it needs to do is power more pixels. So we need to turn it down to 1280 by 720p. I'm not going to click this because I'm running this off a computer. So once you've done that for laptops and everybody else, follow me to this way. Okay, you go to general. Okay, now you've got your overall visibility right here. Okay, so overall visibility means everything you can see here, you can see out. So if I was standing on here, I'll be able to see all of this, all rendered in its loveliness. However, right now it's still giving me 41 frames per second, and the standard norm for today's gaming is 60 frames per second. That's kind of where I want to aim for. The minimal 60 frames per second, easily higher to easily maybe the 70s to 80s. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to turn this down, and you'll start to see having some sort of effect. Do you see that, how you gain some FPS there, but you can't actually see anything in the background? Now bear in mind, my FPS will seem it's not making too much of a change. It's because I am recording, so you need to take that into consideration. However, you do see some change. So as you can see now, I can't see anything, and if I stand there, I won't be able to see the guy next to me. So what I want to do is I want to come back on myself just until I can start seeing water. Now just a little bit. Okay, now I don't want it to go back down into the 40s, so I'm just going to literally change it back just a little bit, so about here. Okay, now think of it this way. Okay, you are incredibly small on this map, so say like this rock here. Okay, so you got this small rock at the bottom. Okay, you are not going to be taller than that. And look at the area of distance that you can see. You can still see all the mountains. This guy on the top of the lighthouse. You don't need to see or have everything else rendered in the background over here. I mean, you're not going to see that, so what's the point of having it rendered? Okay, all you're doing is wasting your FPS potential. So once you've done that, objects. Okay, I don't know too much if this will make a difference. Okay, but we can just double check. Yes, look at that. It makes a big difference. Even whilst recording, it's giving me easily an 8 to 9 frames per second increase, which is absolutely fantastic. However, now the quality looks absolutely rubbish. So what we want to do is we want to just tweak it just a little bit, so you can kind of see the outline go of the difference. So you can see very slightly here how the grass is unrendered there, but it seems to be pretty neat there. And I'll just try and show you again. Can you see that change? Can you see that change? Awesome. So we just want to go to where that ring is. So we don't need to overly render everything too much. So I'm just going to go to about here. About here. You just got to tweak it. There we go. To about here. Okay, now to me that is absolutely perfect, because again, so say like if you're in this little hut here, you can see absolutely everything in the distance. Everything's beautifully rendered. There is no problems. It's only if you want like everything else rendered, like over here, that you can't even see in the first place. It's just absolutely pointless. And look at that, you've just gained yourself 10 frames per second just by tweaking these last little bits here. Now do take note of these numbers, guys, if you want to get exactly the same as me. If you got the same setups, look at my description in the video. If you got the same kind of rig as me, write down these numbers and you can tweak it yourself. Now for the shadows, it doesn't really do much of anything. Okay, but what it does do, if you look very carefully, it doesn't take any FPS off you whatsoever. But you'll see in the background here, in a minute, it'll actually make it look like there's more trees there. So you're actually getting, it's like a bit of a hack, if you will. You're actually getting more of the objects and the overall quality in the background anyway, without it giving you an FPS hit. So it is a bit of a tweak, this one. You can see that, just to show you again. Yeah, so it is a bit of a sneaky way how you can keep your FPS settings up and get the best quality still out of it. So make sure the shadow is turned all the way up. Now, texture quality, objects, and terrain. Now these vary on quality, they vary on your FPS hit, okay? Now for texturing, not so much, not as much as you might think, okay? If I turn this down just a little bit, this is going now to very high, okay? Do you see that? I'm actually decreasing myself because all the power, if you got a graphics card, okay, I'll explain why this happens. If you got a graphics card and then you run just normal CPU, okay, the lower you put your textures down, okay, the more the CPU takes over. So imagine it's like a 50-50 split between the graphics card and the CPU trying to battle out, so then they can like render all this loveliness in the background. The lower you turn it down, the more you give it to the CPU. The higher it goes, the higher bandwidth is needed, and the computer allocates it more to the GPU side. Okay, so you want to turn everything to ultra if possible. And you see that? My frames per second goes absolutely perfectly, but this isn't true for everything, okay? Mainly for the textures, yes. For things like objects and terrain, not so much so, and I'll show you this now. Okay, so I'm going to turn this to high, and do you see that? I'm going to start like jumping up a little bit. It's a stable 50, 51, okay? Turn this to low, 52, okay? And looking at the objects, okay, so let's see how much of a change this makes if you look, say, at this rock face here, okay? So we're going to turn it to very high, okay? Now do you see everything come on back into the map? So you got all like your little rocks here and stuff, okay? And you lose maybe a frame per second for that. Or you turn it off and it kind of clears up the map a little bit, and you keep up to your high 50s, okay? Maybe is there an in between? So again, I'll turn it up to ultra, and then I'm going to turn it to high. So let's see if we can see a difference. Okay, not too much of a difference. The other thing I did notice there, if you look in this little area right here, okay, and you turn it to high, all that happens is you just lose a little bit out of that. So it's a slightly tiny bit of detail, but then again, look at that. That's what I said, it's you have to try and find the balance between your CPU and your GPU, so that's your graphics card. It's just knocked me down 3 frames per second whenever I turn it on ultra, okay? Again, I'm losing a couple of frames per second. So you got to kind of try and find the balance. So very high doesn't change anything, high doesn't change anything, standard gives me 1 extra frames per second. Okay, so if you want that in the background, so the objects, you're only losing 1 frames per second out of your maximum potential, and you're still over by easily 10 frames per second from when we first started, so it's not too much of an issue. So terrain, okay, let's look at terrain. Now if we go from ultra to low, let's see what the difference is. Okay, so from ultra to low, it just kind of takes out the definition of the road, takes out the definition of the sides. So I'll do that again just to show you. So this is ultra. Okay, do you see how everything's all nice and crisp? So main look at the road here, now it all zigzags. Turn it down to low. Okay, do you see all the change at the side of the road there? Now it all seems a bit less defined. And again, it doesn't make any FPS impact, so we're going to turn that back to ultra. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to go into shadows. Now the shadow quality shouldn't be too much, but go to disable. Gives us a steady 45, but nothing overly major. Go back to ultra. 44, 43s. Okay, particles, let's turn these down to low. Particles don't change much of anything. Cloud, let's turn these to low. Let's see if this happens. 44 again, nothing overly major. Let's go back to ultra. Yep, nothing changes. Pictures in mirrors and cockpit screens. So this is like when you're driving, you're looking in your rear view mirrors and your side mirrors. I always recommend, if you have a laptop or like something like a GTX 580 computer running an R7 AMD graphics cards, then you want this to low to disabled, because it won't show up on the FPS here. However, you will notice it when you're driving. I always have mine on standard, and I'm running a pretty good graphics computer anyway. Well, my graphics card is pretty decent, so I always have mine on standard because I just don't see the point. However, you know, you can turn yours to ultra if you have a really good fast computer, or you can turn it to low if you don't. Okay, so still, let's just keep it on standard for now. Okay, As you can see there, you know, it just depends which way you're orientating on the map. It varies from 40 frames per second to 52 frames per second stable. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to change the HDR. Now the HDR is basically the lighting quality. So if you look into the far distance, how the light hits the walls here and it creates a nice reflections, all pretty and colourful. It will change it to low. Look at that, there is not much difference, but it does give you on average an extra 10 frames per second for that. For virtually no difference whatsoever, an extra 10 frames per second. So now we're easily touching our 55 to 60 frames per second goal that we already have. So dynamic lights, we've got this on ultra. This is the number of dynamic lights. Let's turn this down to low. Does it change anything? No. Okay, dokie. And that's what we're going to go and do is go into our anti-aliasing settings. Now bear in mind guys, I keep stressing this, I am recording at 60 frames per second, so the highest you're going to get to see this number right now is 60 frames per second. However, I just recently turned off my recording device just for a quick second. I was easily getting 77, 78 frames per second at these particular settings that we're running at right now. So it just goes to show that whilst recording, I'm still getting 60 frames per second, okay? So let me know how you guys are getting on with your tweaking and leave it in the comment section down below with your results. That'd be absolutely awesome. Now, FSAA, okay? Let's see if we disable this. Whoa, look at that, 77 frames per second and nothing looks out of the blue. Okay, so let's turn this back on to ×8. Okay, we're just capping ourselves in the air a little bit, and it doesn't look any different. Like with FSAA, so this is all anti-aliasing now. You know, you need to look at the edges, that kind of thing. So look at the buildings right here. Okay, concentrate on this box and the surrounding kind of area. Okay, once you disable it, look at that. It doesn't look overly different at all. Yeah, you can see a bit more flickering in the fence line and things like that, and in the building, you know, there might be slight jagged and jagged like edges, but it's not noticeable when you're down there. Honestly, it's not noticeable, and you just saved yourself an extra 10 frames per second. So now we're up to 72 frames per second. That is absolutely incredible. Okay, so this is like the post processing. Again, disable that because you just got this disabled anyway. So this is the after effects of the anti-aliasing. It's like an extra polisher, if you will. There's no point in having it on because you don't have that on, and all it's going to do is keep this exactly the same. I mean, just to prove a point here, I'm going to go into the Ultra one, the FXAA Ultra, and look at that, it doesn't change anything whatsoever. So again, it's just a pointless setting. Keep it off because we don't want it to interfere with anything else. Okay, now this is the next stage. So this is your like a filtering process that happens again after all the anti-aliasing. So it kind of like shows you the details in the road and things like that. So we've got to disable. You don't really gain or lose anything, but you go to ultra, maybe 2 frames per second. So that is completely your choice. So you know, in total with everything on the anti-aliasing side anyway, we've just gained an extra 10 to 11 frames per second just by doing a few simple tweaks. Now let's go over to your ambient occlusion. Okay, now this is this is the high setting it's got, so you can see everything all nice and pretty. Now if we disable that, look at that, 83 frames per second 83 frames per second just by disabling that, and as you can see, it looks absolutely the same, nothing different whatsoever. We'll turn it back on high. Can you tell the difference for a 10 frame drop? No, I can't. Okay, let's put it on disabled again. Look at that, absolutely nothing is changed, and yet 86 frames per second. Okay, now let's put this on. This is now just the reflections in the water, so all the details you can see right here. Let's see if we can put these on disabled. Does it change anything? No, so it doesn't. So this is completely your choice to have it on. If you can have it on without it decreasing any frames, then hey, go nuts. So I hope this has helped you all, guys. We started off at 35, 40 frames per second, and Everything else is still kept exactly the same on this side, so all your shadows and textures and stuff, apart from the few little bits that we changed. The overall objective, I'll let you guys write down these numbers. Just pause the video here. Display, you know, look at that, 1080p display, and I'm getting 87 frames per second. You know, make sure your V-sync is disabled, and then this is where you get the most FPS boost, which is right here. Make sure that these are disabled. Turning that on ultra, it doesn't really particularly matter too much. Turning this on disabled it will give you a big jump, and it's just absolutely common sense to do it. Unless you're running like a 4K display screen, which would only make the slightest bit of difference, then don't even bother with this, just turn it off. And making sure that that is enabled because you can. So guys, I hope this tutorial has helped you out a little bit. Leave your comments below if you have any, let other people know about your results. Thank you as always from me. My name is Zeus Maximus, and I will see you all in the next episode. Thank you very much. Goodbye.